All right, can everyone see my screen? Or can anyone see my screen?
Yes,
perfect.
thanks.
Great. Awesome, thanks. All right, so this is the UMP Certificate of Coverage Kickoff Training, 2021 review for the 2022 plan year. And I am Andrea Clausen with Herb Communications. We are also joined on the call today by several other HCA folks, including Jenna Herman, who will be the lead from portfolio management this year. So as I just mentioned, this training is being recorded. I will email a link to the recorded training to participants a few days after the training. As a reminder, this recording is open to public disclosure. Also, any comments that you put into the chat box is also open to public disclosure. So please don't disclose any private or confidential information. So I wanted to get started today by just reading off our attendees list, recognizing that, of course, not everyone will be able to make it, but it gives you a good sense of who our reviewers are this year. So starting us off, we have Jenna. I'll start off with HCA folks. So Jenna, I already introduced. Selena's with HCA Portfolio Management. I'm Andrea Clausen from HCA Communications, one of 2 UMP lead writers, and the other UMP lead writer is Cora Davidson. We also have Rochelle Andrake with HCA Communications, and then several folks from HCA Portfolio Management, including Shauna Lang, Janice Knutz, Brian Ramsdale, Jenny Switzer, Leanna Olive, Marty Tice, and Pam Martin. Ryan Pistresi and Luke Dearden are our pharmacy experts. And then Jean Bowie is in charge of portfolio management. From HCA Rules, we have Barb and Stella. And then we have our HCA clinical team, Tanya, Carla, and Elizabeth. Which with HCA Legal, we have Troy, Tristan, and Bonnie. And then Leslie is our HCA contract person. We have the AGO on the call today. Michael is lead and Marco will be his backup this year. And then from Regents, we have Nicole and Teresa, Tracy, Mandy, Kendra, Ashley, and Stephanie Walker. From MODA this afternoon, we have Michael and Kristen. And then we have the UMP Plus networks. So from Puget Sound High Value Network, Andrew and Cindy. And then from UW Medicine Accountable Care Network, Van and Tina. And so definitely recognize that all of these folks are not on the call this afternoon, but we do have Cora Davidson taking notes, and so she'll be marking off who is actually in attendance today. And I want to take the opportunity now, in case I forget at the end, to thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. I don't know if we'll be taking the full 90 minutes, but we did schedule that just to be on the safe side to leave time for questions. So thank you for joining us today as we get started for the 2022 COCs. Just some reminders and housekeeping. Please keep yourself on mute unless you have a question. As I mentioned, Cora will be taking notes and Jenna will be monitoring the chat box. On today's agenda, we'll be going over who and how to contact. We'll look at the COC schedule. We'll also be going over the COC review process. We'll take a look at SharePoint, and then hopefully at the end, we'll have time for some questions, discussion, and wrap up. So who to contact? So as I mentioned this year, Jenna Herman is the UMP Portfolio Management lead for the COCs. Her backup will be Selena Davis. If you have questions about the COC schedule or benefit questions, please email Jenna and make sure to copy Selena. If Jenna is out of the office, you can go ahead and email Selena, making sure to copy Jenna. I, again, am Andrea Clausen, and I am the communications lead on the COCs this year, and my backup is Cora Davidson. Please make sure to copy both of us when you are emailing about the COCs, and that just make sure that nothing gets missed if you're copying both of us. When you're emailing, we do ask that you use a particular subject line format, and the reason behind this is it helps us track different questions and different COC items. And it also helps us kind of search our Outlook inbox to more easily find different emails on any issues or questions you have. So when you're doing your subject line, you'll want to start off with the topic. So that would be UMP COC, and then the subject. So as you see in our example, we have preventive care question. And then if there is a due date, please make sure to include that as well. It's also helpful if you could acknowledge receipt of any emails regarding the COC, and that can be just as quick as confirming receipt. So that way we know that you did get it, nothing went awry with Moving into the COC schedule. So the PEB and SEB COCs will be reviewed at the same time again this year. Their COC review schedule is on SharePoint, and I'll go ahead and pull that up now as well. So hopefully this will look familiar to most of you because we did send it out for review a few weeks ago. And this first tab here is the schedule. We'll be looking at some of these other tabs a little later on in the presentation. So you'll notice that there's a description, number of business days, start date, and end date. This is very similar to the setup that we had last year. Finals for both PEB and SEB are due on September 24th, and the review period will actually start next week with our vendors, Regents, Moda, and the Plus networks, and that will begin on Monday, March 8th. So this Friday, March 5th, I will be sending out the COCs, and then your review will begin on March 8th. For HCO and the AGO, review begins on Thursday, March 25th. As a reminder, it would be a good idea now to block out time in advance on your calendar. While deadlines are not flexible, they are also not close of business. So if, excuse me, so for example, if a deadline is on a Wednesday, the review is technically due by 7:30 the next day. So for example, 7:30 a.m. on Thursday morning. If a due date is on a Friday, you do have until the next Monday at 7:30 a.m. Now, obviously, we don't want people working on the weekends, but sometimes that happens. And so I wanted to clarify that due dates are not close of business, but rather 7:30 a.m. the next day or Monday if the deadline is on a Friday. We ask that you not make edits in the drafts outside of your review scheduled period. And I'm going to pause here and just see if there are any questions on the COC schedule portion. Okay, if you do happen to have a question, feel free to ask at the end, and you can also put those questions into the chat box because Jenna is looking at the chat box. So this year there are 4 rounds of review. In rounds 1 and 2, there will be 3 master drafts again this year, and so very similar to what we did last year. And the reason we have those 3 master drafts is to help maintain consistent content between the plans, and also hopefully to keep you from having to review the same content repeatedly. So those 3 master drafts, one of the drafts is for Plus, and differences between the plans are specified in brackets. And so for the Plus master draft, the differences will be labeled in brackets either with this PEB-SEB identifier or by plan, depending on how the change applies. So I put a couple of examples here. This first one is a PEB-SEB example, and you'll notice this one is calling out the UMP customer service, which is slightly different for PEB and SEB. So in the brackets, we have the PEB number and we have the SEB number. Also in that Plus master draft, you might see a call out by plan difference. And so in the sentence that I have here as an example, you can see it says, if you use find a doctor, by searching as a guest, you must choose for the UMP plus PSHVN this first one would be chosen. For UW, the second one would be chosen. And so throughout that first master draft, which again, I'm talking here about plus, you'll see different call outs and differences in brackets, either PEB/SEB or by plan. Another master draft will be the classic, select, achieve 1, and achieve 2. So all of those plans are in one document. For this master draft, differences are labeled by plan. So in the example here, it says UPay classic and achieve is 15, and select and achieve 2 is 20. So depending on which plan we're talking about, that's the percent of the allowed amount for most covered services. And then the last master draft will be CDHP and high deductible. They are in one document, and those are also labeled by plan. So here it says visit for CDHP, the provider search URL is slightly different than the high deductible URL. So for rounds 1 and 2, again, there'll be 3 master drafts, plus one for the plus plans, one for CDHP and high deductible, and then one for classic, select, achieve 1, and achieve 2. In the semifinal round, so that would kind of be the third round of review, that's where these get split out into individual plan drafts. So you will have 10 drafts to review for semifinal, and then those same 10 drafts to review for the final round. So looking a little more closely at rounds 1 and round 2, the COC sections tab of the review schedule shows you which parts of the COC you'll be reviewing in those rounds. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up again for you to see. So in this next tab, COC sections, you can see for round 1, you'll be reviewing from the beginning of the COC all the way through vision benefits. This year, we're breaking the COC up roughly in half. So round 1 is the first half of the COC. And then in round 2, you'll be reviewing prescription drug benefit all the way through the end of the COC. Roughly speaking, round 1 is about 85 pages, and round 2 will be about 90 pages. In round 2, in addition to focusing on that second half of the COC, just a reminder that you'll also want to go back and look at the first half to see if any additional changes were made. Rules and policy will be providing the enrollment and eligibility section by 8.1. And so that section is actually, you won't see that in the draft in rounds 1 and 2. And then this year, the complaints and appeals section, we're also reviewing that separately. And so you won't be able to give feedback on that section during round 1 or round 2 either, because we're reviewing that on a separate timetable. When you're looking at round 1 and round 2, you will be able to enter edits into the unlocked sections of the 3 drafts. So in the classic, select, achieve 1, and achieve 2, most content is unlocked in that draft, just as it was last year. The exception to that is the book of business sections. And so there's Regents and MODA and HCA identified some book of business sections that we knew would not be changed for next year. And so those are locked. Those sections are identified on the book of business tab in the schedule. And so that is the tab right here. So if you come across a section in that classic draft and you're like, wow, this, that's kind of weird. Why can't I get into it? You might want to check and see if it's one of these book of business sections, and that will likely be the case. In Plus and the CDHP high deductible, only plan-specific content and areas that are different from Classic will be unlocked. New for this year, you can make track changes in the unlocked parts of the whole COC during all rounds. So for example, during round 1, I know I'm only reviewing, again, about the first 85 pages. But if I'm going through and on page 10, I put in an edit and I think, oh, that also appears much later in the COC on page 120. You can go ahead and go to later in the COC on page 120 and put that edit in so that you don't forget to do it. That said, just realize that reviewers might not see that edit until they get to that part in round 2. That's a slight change this year that we wanted to make sure you could add changes to the entire COC during our rounds, so that you could go ahead and put those edits in as you're thinking about them. We do want to remind you to read all sections assigned to each round in the COCs, including the locked sections. So you will be able to add track changes to parts that are unlocked. And then to the locked sections, you can add comments. We ask that before you add a comment to the locked section that you email Jenna and Selena first. And this is because we don't anticipate a lot of changes in those locked sections. The reason also that we want you to, even though we're not anticipating a lot of changes in the locked sections, we are asking that you read both locked and unlocked. And this is to ensure that the information is accurate and consistent throughout the entire COC, and also to ensure that new edits do get added in all applicable areas. So again, we want you to read, for round 1, it would be that first half, and you're reading both locked and unlocked for accuracy and consistency. And then in round 2, it would be the second half. I'm going to pause there because I did mention a couple of things that might be different this year, to just see if there are any questions. Okay, I'll continue forward, and please remember you can put questions in that chat box or save them until the end as well. As you're looking at rounds 1 and 2, please make sure to focus on substantive content changes and corrections. So accuracy is critical. You want to make sure you're confirming the accuracy of the edit before putting it in, and also provide background and research to support your change. Something that's new this year is we are asking that you enter your edit into the 2022 changelog before putting it into the COC. This is the list that will be used to record decisions on edits. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. We also ask that you make the majority of your edits during the round 1 and round 2 review cycles. So we're hoping, excuse me, we're hoping to get most of the edits in during round 1 and round 2, and then much fewer edits in the semifinal and the final versions. You'll be entering your edits into the SharePoint online drafts. Please don't send offline drafts by email. The exception to this is the AGO office, and so you will be communicating directly with Jenna and Selena, and then the Plus networks, you'll be communicating directly with Brian. So wanted to go into a little bit more detail about entering your edit into the changelog, because that is new this year. So we're using the changelog to keep track of decisions, and the 2022 changelog, the current name of that is the 2022 proposed edits and beyond. So after the training today, I will be updating the title, but I didn't want to update the title before alerting folks to that. So when you enter your edit into the changelog, excuse me, and the exception to this is the Plus Networks and the AGO. So Plus Networks and AGO, you won't be doing this because you don't have access to SharePoint. HCA will be helping to add any needed edits to that log for you. For all of our other subject matter experts, when you're entering your edit into the changelog, you want to make sure to include a section heading if applicable. So this is going to help us find the edit. There'll be a status, and I'll do a demo here in just a moment so that you can see it. So there'll be a status, and so once you enter it into the changelog, you'll put your edit into the COC, and you'll have the status be in review. You want to include the current language in the COC, your proposed change, and the reason for the change, and then you'll put your name into the contact box. In the changelog, there's a decision column, and that will show whether HCA accepted, rejected, or modified the edit. And that is where the decisions will appear this year. So the decisions will not be appearing in the COCs themselves. And we're making this process change this year to help keep the COCs more readable. We're also hoping to keep the size of the COC documents down to potentially help with some SharePoint issues we were having last year. And we're hoping, that this is a new way to help reviewers find decisions. So I'm actually going to do a demo, but there is this slide here so that you also have that as you're kind of trying to go back and remember what to do. So I was going to put an edit into the COC. I would want to first make sure I put it into the change log. And so on the SharePoint site, again, right now, the title of this is Proposed Changes 2022 and Beyond. I'll be updating that title. So you can go over here and click on this. That'll bring you to that change log. And then you can click New Item, and that will bring up this page that you can fill out. I'm going to go back real quick and just use a pre-filled one that I have already to show you as an example. Okay, so I'm looking in the COC and I decide, okay, I'm in the benefits section under TMJ treatments, and I'm noticing that disorder is used in some places and not others. And so the first thing to do is I put in TMJ treatments because that's the section heading that I'm in the COC. And then this just gives a kind of little brief description of what the change might be. The next part you want to do for status is I'm going to put this in the change log, and then I'm also going to make the change in the COC. So when I make the change in the COC, you're going to put status as in review. Please ignore these three right here that you're seeing. We're going to be getting rid of those. So this is kind of a work in progress, but before these go out on Friday, we will be updating it. So the only thing you'll see is not started, in review, and complete. And so again, you will be using the in review status. So that means it is in the COC, it's ready for other SMEs and for HCA to review. For this one, I think it will always be 2022, so plan your impact. And then the next category allows you to choose which COC you're talking about. And you can select more than one. So if this would only affect the 2+ plans, you can go ahead and select those. If it affects all, you want to click here. But you can select as many of these as the change that you're proposing affects. Under program, you have the choice of PEB, SEB, or both. And then in the description, you want to put the current language in the COC, then your suggested language. And I noticed here that I mistyped, so I can correct that now. And you can use these tools over here to help with the suggested language. So you'll notice here, in order to get that cross out, I highlighted it and I clicked the cross out. This also allows you to change your font color. So if I was suggesting adding language, then I might want to use a different font color to show the addition of the language. And then you want to put your reason here. So as HCA is looking at these, we kind of know the explanation behind the change. And so reason, I'm proposing this change for consistency throughout the COCs. Just so you know, this is a fake example, so I'm just using this for demo purposes only today. For contact, again, I want to put my name because I'm the one who's suggesting the edit. And then you will leave this blank. So as Jenna and Selena go through the change log, this is where you will see their decisions. So they will put, accept this decision because it improves consistency, or reject this decision. It should be, it should be different. And so that's where the decision will go. And then at the bottom, you just hit save. So since this is a new step, I am again going to pause and see if you have questions on this one.
Hey, Andrea, it's Cora.
Yeah.
I thought of a question while you were talking. So say I put an edit in, added to the change log and I put it in the draft. do I also need to put into the draft the reasoning why we're requesting this change, or do we need to add a comment that says it's been added to the change log?
So Jeanette, I'm gonna let you answer that one. If people are putting their reason into the change log, do you also want them to put their reason into the COC draft as well?
I don't think it's necessary if we're tracking it in the change log.
Do we want to, I mean, I don't know what it's going to be like for Jenna and Selena. So when they're going through the change log to approve changes, do we as reviewers have to put the page number that we're on in the current COC we're reviewing so they can find it easily, or is there some sort of mechanism that's going to just take them where this changes?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start the answer to this one, and then Jenna, feel free to jump in. And so what we would like you to do is when you're putting the change in, we want you to put the heading of the COC of where the change is occurring. And so that will kind of help Jenna locate the change. The page number, the pages will be changing quite a bit as people are adding and taking out edits. So we're kind of trying to look at those. What heading is the edit nearest to?
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I will also say on that one, if it's a change that should happen throughout the COC, then you could indicate, you could put throughout COC here, either in the title or in your description. So if it's something that isn't to a particular section, but you think actually should be throughout the COC. An example of that one might be balance billing. So we're changing the language a little bit on that this year, and that appears throughout the COC. So that wouldn't necessarily have a discrete section heading.
Andrea, this is Teresa. Would it be helpful, I'm just keep thinking of the cross-referencing and then the statement that the page numbers will keep changing, that we put a comment of just the ID number. Is there going to be an ID number assigned to the SharePoint change log? Because we'll be putting that in first, and then if there's a number assigned to it, we could just put a number, the cross-reference of the number in the COC where we're making the change.
This is Jenna. I don't believe, Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe there's an ID number. So with that said, Teresa, I really appreciate you bringing that up. To resolve that, let's just go ahead and have reviewers put a comment of what they're going to put in the change log. Go ahead and put it in the drafts to help, ease of access of reviewing. So we're not doing a lot of, flipping around and trying to find the reason or the change. Does that make sense?
So what I'm hearing you say, Jenna, is that it would be helpful to have both the reason in the change log and then also to just put the reason in the COC draft as well.
Yeah.
In comments, Jenna, would you like that in comments?
Yes, please. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, great questions. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and continue forward. And again, at the end, we should have time for more questions as well. Okay, so after round 1 and round 2, the third round is the semifinal. And so again, in this round, you're going to be reviewing all 10 drafts. So the 3 drafts become 10, 1 for each UMP plan. Content in the classic, select, achieve 1, and achieve 2 will continue to be unlocked, while plan-specific content and the other drafts will be locked. Plan-specific content and the other drafts will be unlocked as well. You'll want to focus on the semifinal only on critical content changes and corrections. So again, we're hoping that most edits can be put in during rounds 1 and round 2. Again, accuracy is crucial. Hopefully not anticipating a large number of edits at this point. For the semifinal, you'll want to enter your edit into the changelog before putting it into the COC, just like you did in rounds 1 and round 2. And you'll enter your edits into the SharePoint online draft. Please don't email offline, except in there again is the AGO and the UMP Plus networks. For the final round, again, it'll be 10 drafts. Content in Classic is unlocked. For the other plans, only that plan-specific content is unlocked. For the final, it's really focusing on just correcting errors. So only showstopper edits. Again, please make sure that you're providing your reasoning, background, and support for the change. Enter your edit into the changelog before putting it into the COC. And any edits made during this final round that is not a showstopper edit or correcting a critical error will be ignored or saved for the 2023 UMP COC. Again, you'll be entering your edits into the SharePoint online draft, not sending offline copies. Exception there, again, is the AGO and UMP Plus networks. Okay, so looking at the COC process, locked content. So you've heard me talk about unlocked and locked content a couple of times already in the presentation. The documents are locked, and that means that they are protected. And so track changes and the comment features are locked on in order to capture all edits. So when you go into the COC and you start typing, it should appear automatically in track changes. If that is not happening, please contact me immediately, because that means that I did not hold up my end and I forgot to lock the content. If you start putting edits in and it's not showing up in track changes, that's on me, and please contact me so I can fix that right away. Certain sections are locked, again, in order to save time and maintain consistency across plans. So you can add comments to the locked content using the normal process, just like you would use on a regular Word document to add a comment. Because we don't anticipate a lot of changes to the locked sections, please email Jenna or Selena before adding a comment to the locked section. So by doing that, if you're looking at a locked section and you think, ooh, yeah, this wording is not correct, email Jenna and Selena first. They'll take a look at your email, say, yep, that makes sense. Go ahead and put a comment in, and then you can go ahead and put that comment both into the changelog and into the COC. You won't be, because I have the locking on, you cannot accept or reject changes, and you cannot change styles or formatting. If you change your mind while you're editing, you can click undo, which is Control-Z. If you can't undo the edit, for example, to restore a deleted edit, you might need to retype it. Looking at roles and responsibilities of reviewers, first we're going to take a look at our lead reviewers. So we want to make sure that all edits are entered into the SharePoint draft, and we identify reviewers who need access to SharePoint. I believe all of our reviewers do have access, but if there's someone who is a lead reviewer that doesn't have access, please let me know. To maintain quality control, access is limited to 1 lead and 1 backup for most review groups. And the reviewer tab in the COC calendar sets out who those lead and reviewers are. So if you do look at the review tab and you've had a change in your team and somebody else is a lead and a backup, please let me know and I can update this, and also make sure that they have access to the SharePoint site. If you are a lead and you receive edits from someone who doesn't have SharePoint access, then the lead will need to enter the edit to the online copy. You want to make sure to use Notepad if you're copying and pasting, and I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail here in just a bit. If you are a lead, you will want to notify me when your team's review is complete. And if we don't hear from you by the deadline, we're going to assume that your review is complete and move on to the next step. The AGO will be notifying Jenna and Selena. And again, the Plus networks will be notifying Ryan. If you are a subject matter expert reviewer, you want to remember that to focus on content within your subject matter area, kind of otherwise known as that stay in your swim lane. So different subject matter areas, we have prescription drugs and pharmacy, clinical, legal, communications, and account management benefits. As you're reviewing, you also, so first question to ask yourself is, okay, is this in my area of expertise? Next question to ask yourself is this a change that needs to happen? So if the content is within your subject matter area, you want to make changes that are correcting errors or adding clarity to that benefit. And we're trying not to do change just for change's sake, if you will. Please do not make changes to grammar, punctuation, or formatting. So if you see some grammar or punctuation that's not looking correct, please email me and copy Cora, and I can take a look at that because that's in my subject matter area. Also, please do not make changes to page numbers or page references. I will be updating all of those before the document is finalized. So I think last year, instead of page references, you saw XX. This year, there are page numbers in there, but especially as the document gets going and we add to it, those will be incorrect. So you don't need to do anything with those. That's in my subject matter area, and I'll be updating those before the document is finalized. Also, please don't make changes to the table of contents. Again, that'll be updated when the document is finalized. I am leaving the table of contents in at least for round one to see if folks like it. As I've been working with the documents, I found it really helpful to have that there to kind of help locate myself within the document. If it turns out that it's, a lot of people are saying that's not helpful or confusing, we might not do that next year. But again, the table of contents is just to help kind of locate you in the document. Please don't make changes to it. I'll make sure that that's updated when the document is finalized. If you do have questions, please talk with your lead first before contacting Jenna or me. Okay, so using Notepad, if you are adding content to the SharePoint drafts and you need to paste that in from any other source, so that might be another Word document, a task list, anything else, we ask that you first scrub the content of the formatting. And the reason we're asking you to do this is to hopefully cut down on kind of some funky styles and format changes that we saw happening last year. So we do appreciate kind of this extra step. So what you want to do is open the Notepad software. I have the icon here, and for me, I have it pinned down here as well. So for example, I'll go ahead and go to our agenda. So I would go ahead and if this was the content I wanted to paste, I would copy that, and copy is Control-C. And then I could go into the COC. I would want to open Notepad. And I'm going to paste it in here. And Notepad, again, is going to clear external formatting for me, extra formatting. So once you have it in Notepad, you want to highlight it, cut it out of Notepad, and now you can put it into the COC. And again, we are asking you to take that extra step to hopefully cut down on any funky styles or formatting if you're cutting and pasting from another source. Using the comment feature, so you can use the comment feature for questions, comments, or placeholders. You want to address comments, please, to specific person or vendor. And then during your review, you can search the document for your name or the name of your company to make sure that all questions posed are answered. Don't use comments to edit body text. So instead, edit the body text directly. And please do not put comments into the changelog, comments or questions into the changelog. So for example, if I had a question to Jenna about, say, removing a disorder from TMJ. So I have that question. I could use the comment feature and say, hey, Jenna, I'm wondering about removing this. And then Jenna, when it was her turn to review, could search the document and she could reply by selecting the reply option. If a comment or conversation goes beyond a couple of replies, a couple of back and forths, please take it outside of the document. And then once it's resolved, you can enter the edit into the changelog and into the text itself. So in that example that I was using, say I had that question for Jenna, hey Jenna, should I remove, should disorder be removed here? Jenna could reply back and say, yes, it should be removed. So then I can go into that section, remove disorder from where I'm seeing it, and then also make sure that that edit then goes into the changelog. We ask that you not enter questions, comments, or placeholders in the body of the text. So again, please use that commenting feature to do that. We will be having weekly check-in meetings again. So Regents, our check-in meetings are on Tuesdays, and MODA, they are on Wednesdays. And so during those check-in meetings, that's a great time for us to discuss benefit questions, review any schedule or process questions. If you're having SharePoint issues, please let us know. And we can also do live editing of content. So we'll be continuing those weekly meetings throughout the year. And then we'll also be having some additional meetings. So meeting after round 2 to discuss round 2 edits before the COCs are split up into their 10 separate drafts. And then if needed, also meeting after that final round of review to discuss. Moving into the SharePoint overview, at the beginning of each review period, I will email you a link to the COC document library. So to edit, you're going to click the link to access the library, open up the COC, and then read the assigned sections, entering edits into those unlocked areas as you would any other document. Again, you can make comments into locked sections, but you want to contact Jenna and Selena first. You can click the save icon in the top left corner of the document as you're reviewing before you close. And you want to repeat this step for all of the drafts. If you're not actively working on the document, please make sure to save and close it. If you leave it open and then other reviewers are working on it, that can cause some conflicting edits. If you're not actively working on the draft, please do make sure that you save and close it. You want to, again, email your lead when all reviews are complete, and then the lead will email me to let me know that the review is complete, again, with the exception of the AGO and the Plus network. If you open the COC link from the email, please do not use Chrome as your browser. Your changes won't be saved in SharePoint. So you want to make sure that you're using either an Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge. We haven't tried Firefox yet, but we primarily use Internet Explorer. When I have opened a link using Chrome from an email, unfortunately, I made changes and I thought they were being saved and then they weren't. So please make sure that you're not using Chrome as your browser, but rather Internet Explorer or Microsoft. Also, helpful tip to make sure that SharePoint is working properly, make sure your software is up to date. And then we're hoping that our update to Office 365 has fixed some issues that we had last year. That said, if you open the document and the formatting looks really wrong, please close it without saving and reopen. And if it still looks wrong, please email me or send me a chat message on Teams. So last year we were having some issues with the document reformatting itself. And if you're working on the document, if you have it open and you've been putting in your changes and you're working on the document and it suddenly changes formatting, again, please contact me by email or Teams chat right away so I can try and get in there and fix it. And again, we are hoping to fix some of the reformatting issues by the move to Office 365 and also by hopefully keeping the document size a little bit smaller this year. So if you go in, you clicked on the COC, you're in it, and you are ready to edit, you might wonder, how do you know which sections are unlocked so that you know which sections you can track changes in? So sections that are unlocked, and I have a sample here at the bottom of the slide, they're going to be highlighted in that bright yellow color. Again, track changes should be automatically on, so you should be able to just start typing and it'll show up in track changes. If they're not on, please let me know immediately, and that just means I forgot to lock the document and have the proper settings on, and I can go in and fix that. If you need to edit a locked section, again, you might wonder, okay, how do I do that? So the majority of Classic Select Achieve 1 and Achieve 2 is unlocked. If an edit isn't plan specific, please enter it in the Classic draft. So an example of that might be, I'm in a plus draft, I'm in a locked, I'm in a section and I notice a change is needed, but it's not highlighted in bright yellow, so I know it's locked. I would want to go ahead and enter that edit into the Classic draft. And I would be able to do that using track changes. So again, if it's in kind of, and we call that shared content. So it's in, if you happen to be in one of the other COCs, it's not Classic and it's in locked content, it's likely you can go ahead and go over to the Classic version and be able to put your edit in. If a change does need to be made to content that's locked in any draft, you can add a comment to that locked content. Again, since we don't anticipate changes to locked sections, you want to contact Jen and Selena first. And then if they say, yep, it does make sense to put that comment in, you want to, excuse me, you want to highlight the content that it impacts and then go ahead and write in your edit into that comment, and communications can later unlock it and go ahead and put it into the body itself. As you are working in SharePoint, you will see the presence of other reviewers in the Share tab, and that's the green circle right over here. And you can save at any time and continue working on the document, the save icon up there in the upper left-hand corner. Again, it's fine to save often. If you are going to be away from your computer for a while, please do save and close the document. Okay, so with that, those are the major points that we wanted to cover this afternoon. And I would just like to see if there are any other questions today.
Hello, Andrea?
Yeah, hi, Michael. I think that's Michael, right?
Yeah, that's Michael. Just wanted to double check. So for the plan specific edits, say something applies to all of the plans except for, say, the high deductible and CDHP, we're gonna make those changes into the classic and select and plus plans and the Achieve 1 and Achieve 2, and just leave it blank for CDHP and high deductible. Is that correct?
So if an edit would apply to all plans, the edit, it's likely that you want to put that in the Classic version, which is the Classic Achieve 1, Achieve 2, and Select. So you would put that edit in to the shared content. And then if you wanted to be, if you wanted to be really specific to make sure that we knew, hey, this applies to plus but not CDHP, you could add a comment letting us know that.
Okay, thank you.
And so generally when it's in, yeah, when it's in Classic and it's in that shared content, I will be thinking, oh, okay, yep, that's going to apply across the board. So I can understand your question there, Michael, where if you're like, well, it does apply to most plans, but not CDHP and high deductible. And so I do think it would be fine to add a comment in that case to be on the safe side if you wanted to do that. Jenna, does that make sense to you?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a follow-up question, just kind of piggybacking on that. So do we need to reach out to HCA anytime before we enter a comment, or for things like that, is it okay to enter a comment without sending an email first?
So I would say, I think it's fine to, in that instance, to just go ahead and put the comment. I'm going to pull up CDHP. So I think where we want you to contact Jen and Selena is if you're working and you'll notice, so this isn't highlighted in yellow, so that means it's locked. And you're looking at this and you're like, I think, I don't think that this is correct. So if you're in content that's locked, before you put a comment in there, that's when you want to contact Jen and Selena to see, like, okay, is that really different from Classic? And if so, they can say, like, yep, it is different. There should be a change there before you put your comment in.
Okay, got it. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Waiting just another moment to see if there are additional questions. If there's not, there's one more, because it looks like we have time, there's one more thing that I can show you, but want to just make sure that if folks have questions, they have a chance to ask those.
Rochelle did ask a question in the chat. She was wondering, does anyone use a Mac or Apple products to edit the COCs? And she's wondering if anyone has had issues using Safari or shared editing features when using a Mac. So is there anyone on this call that does use a Mac for editing the COCs? Alrighty, I'll take that as a no.
Good to know. It was totally just out of curiosity.
Okay, so I'm going to show you one more thing that you might see that's a little bit different from last year. And this is the CDHP high deductible that I'm in. So something that we're trying this year is, again, anywhere where CDHP and high deductible is different from Classic, we're trying to point that out. And so you'll notice here that on page 152, an if you is highlighted, and that might look a little weird. And so the reason that that's highlighted is that means if you compared this to Classic, there would be something different in this area. I don't have Classic pulled up, so off the top of my head, my guess is there's likely a tip or a note that appears here, that appears between these two, that doesn't appear. And I think it's likely for Medicare. And so what we're doing here is we're kind of indicating, like, oh, okay, that's going to be different from Classic. There's something different in high deductible, the high deductible draft that's different from Classic. So as you're going through, I just wanted to point that out, because you might wonder, well, if why is why would that be changed? But yeah, that's something that we're trying this year, again, in order to help differentiate the plans and kind of show, if you had them side by side, where they would be different. Okay, well, it sounds like that there aren't any more questions right now. So follow-up steps, I will be sending the COCs out on Friday to vendors for review. Again, vendor review will start on Monday. I will also be sending out a recording of this training. So if you have folks on your team that weren't able to make it, you can feel free to share that link with them as well. And then we will be having with Regents and MODA, we will be having continuing to have our check-in meetings. So if you have questions, that's a great place to bring them up. And then Cora has been taking notes. So when I send out the recording for this training, I can also send out a copy of those notes. It's likely we'll post those on SharePoint, so it'll be a link to the notes for the training. All right, any final thoughts before we sign off for today? Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody again for your time today and look forward to working with you as we get the 2022 COCs ready. Thank you for attending today.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.